to the Security Playbook. I am Ken Townsend. I'm a global CISO working for a global food manufacturer. And my guest today is Maybelline, and she is actively, looking for a role inside cybersecurity, has a wealth of knowledge. And I won't do her any justice to go over her background. So I'm going to turn it over to you, May. Number one, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to join me today. And why don't you give your background and introduce everyone to who you are.
Thank you so much, Ken. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Maybelline Pletchich. You can call me May as for ease. I have over 24 years of background in the technology as a cable technician, all the way to being a consultant, and also in the engineering space as an engineering manager and a technical enablement manager, also for Zoom as the last role that I had. I believe security and cyber is a hot topic right now, and I want to fill that gap. I want to be in front of that momentum that we're evolving and living into.
No, but that's good. So, yeah, it sounds like we got similar backgrounds and, how we got started, or at least how I got started in this space. It was started off I did telecommunications management, working phone systems and the punch down blocks and all those things there. And I think it gave me a good foundation to that. So maybe you can talk about some of the things that you've done early, in your career, and how you think that can help translate, into a cybersecurity role.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the story of how I even started with CCNA. I was doing cable technician work. The first job that I had was servicing cable TV. So imagine you brand new going into a house, you have a route that they give you, meaning orders that you go to a house, and you need to figure out how to run the cable. RG6 is one of the cables, the coaxial cable that you have to run. You have to distinguish whether you're fixing inside a house or externally, right? And during that time, I started during the winter. There was blizzards. Imagine working late at night till midnight. I was exhausted. But one thing that I've learned is asking the right questions is important. So, for example, if you ask a customer, hey, are you having issues with just one TV, two TV, or everything else in your house? If they say everything, I'm going to check outside first. I want to see, is it a cable issue that maybe is a tap, is it sock out because it's wintertime? Make sure it's waterproof, right? Or no squirrel ate it up, right? So it's an easy fix. You don't have to go inside. You can easily fix that. But if it's an inside question and they say, oh, it's just one TV or two, which happened often. And typically it was either just another, a splitter in there that they don't need, a suck out, or they've accidentally turned on the mute and the label's already gone. Remotes are out of sync, especially working with people in the retirement homes. It was a very impactful job to me personally, because I got to see the homes and got to see how they felt about technology. It was something intimate for them. You have to go in their space and ensure that you were respectful and that you're troubleshooting the correct issue so that they're happy as a customer. So I feel like customer service is first thing when you're doing that job as a cable technician. And then it evolved to being a consultant. That helped with me working in large scale. Being in consulting, it's a different perspective. It's working with the C-levels, working with the VP, making sure that the statement of work is correct, that you work with the pre-sales team, with the sales team. And sales cycles are not short, they're very long. Doesn't mean that because you have an opportunity, it's sold, right? Many times we do pre-sales work, meaning we would demo out things, proof of concept. It may take a few months, if not 6 months or a year, to even get a statement of work, depending on that industry, depending on the customer and the criticality of the product and solutions they're dealing. So on top of that, you have to understand security by default, because that knowledge that you have is proprietary, is NDA. And if you're working with government agency, that stuff requires background checks, security clearances. You need to know information and who to talk to and what's allowable. And you also need to understand the messaging of the company, especially in the training aspect. When you're deploying systems, you can't just say everything, all the features, right? You need to match your audience. You need to make sure if it's a C-level, an administrative assistant, an operator security, or whatever their role, it's different. You have to conversate in different levels.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of transferable skills, that, can be taken, from there as you enter into cybersecurity. And one thing that stands out is the troubleshooting. And number one, you have to make sure you're working on the right problem, as you said, not trying to solve the symptom. And you got to get to these issues quick, right? So maybe in your case, you had to get to the next order. There, you can't be at a certain house all day because you don't have those great troubleshooting skills or not asking the right questions. And I think that's a vital piece, in cybersecurity as well. Yeah. Okay. So kind of you seeing all of the you turn on the news or at least the articles and things that I read, there's like breaches and attacks every day, so why would somebody even want to do this? Why do you want to enter into cybersecurity and join the fun? Yeah.
I mean, I think that we need to do better as far as messaging the basic fundamental best practices. For example, having unique passwords, right? For logins for different applications, not using the same thing for using social media accounts for many critical accounts like bank accounts or whatever application. You breach one, everything else is compromised. I know people personally that have been scammed as far as their money's taken out of their bank, ransomed and everything else. I'll give you a personal one. My parents, when they were still alive, one person actually called my dad to say, hey, your son is stuck in this street. Send me some money so I can help you help your son. And they're literally actors that they have that make it sound like your son or your loved ones. And thankfully, my mom was very suspicious and said, no, this is a scam. So they reported it to the police. But you see, that's even the saddest part. They take advantage of the elderly because they have a knowledge gap in technology. So I believe that retirement homes, we need to do more to educate retirement homes. We also need to educate our children, because they're also very much connected on the internet. What child now is not on YouTube that sees the advertisements or has access to the social media and there's bots in the messengers? How do they decipher and understand? I have a son that's autistic. He doesn't understand jokes. He doesn't understand cliches. He doesn't even get abstract information, even in the educational sense, right? Emotional intelligence is very challenging. And this is nowadays with more information, thankfully, there's more understanding and neurodiversity. Now, how do we, as security specialists, now communicate with this varied population and understanding how to secure simple things, even protecting their homes, not walking with a stranger, not being picked up, right? Human trafficking. So security impacts not just systems, it impacts people from all aspects of our lives, personally and professionally.
Yeah, I think you make a very, good point on that. And it kind of makes me think, of the importance of security awareness training. In organizations, I go to different places and there's this debate. Does it work? Does it not work? Are we spending too much time on it or not? But just wanted to get your thoughts on, what are some of the ways that you think we can train and educate? Because training makes it sound, just mandatory, got to do this. But how can we educate? And I'll keep going with the question, because when you tie it to people's personal lives, I think it matters. And then if you can kind of use that in an organization, they can kind of make that correlation. I don't know if I was a worker in an organization, I may not truly understand what this stuff is they're telling me to do. But when you relate it to that personal life, that could help. But maybe what are your thoughts on like awareness training? Because they say that people is the first line of defense, when you're trying to protect an organization.
Normalize the conversation. I talk to my friends that I go to karate class. Any instance that I can get, I bring up security conversations. You know what I tell them? Are you willing to lose your retirement money in a few seconds? Right? If you click the email, it's a phishing email, and now you download something that you shouldn't, malicious files, it gets ransomed. Or you get scammed with Bitcoin type scams, right? I can't imagine how painful it is to lose all that you worked hard to save. And I feel like that resonates more with people if they say, you know what? Yeah, it's a hassle to have multi-factor code like authenticators like Google or Microsoft or whatever it is, but at least I'm protected. They won't steal my own money that I work hard for, my Social Security, funds, all that. We have to make it more personal because it's real. And the saddest thing, I attended a workshop for our chapter last Saturday. And one of the gentlemen shared that his mom is a victim of romance scam. And he told the FBI already and notified them to protect her. But she doesn't understand and she doesn't believe, and she's still getting scammed. So she's still losing money today how sad, how just heartbreaking that is, right? So I feel like we need to normalize this. I don't think that the security awareness training shouldn't be like a mandatory thing. I think it should be a regular conversation, that it's normal in our day to day, that it should be like a check-in, like a wellness check, right? We start young, and even in families, we need to conversate with our children better and say, hey, I don't want you to accidentally be now talking to somebody that's not really that person, especially gaming, right? Many people are using Discord, Twitch to advertise. I mean, in previous age, and I'm sure my age, you knew to block windows, doors, and everything else. Now with the cameras everywhere, mobile, what privacy do we have? We're exposing what background we have, what we have in the house. It's making it very interesting for attackers to want to, hey, you're a great asset. You're my target next now. You're my threat target goal now, right?
Yep. No, I think that is very key. I think I like that, normalizing the conversation. Because sometimes that word mandatory security training it's an exercise. And one of the things that we try to do is embed security in the culture, right? Make it just part of the everyday, routine. And I know some of the vendors that I've worked with in the past, they offer free training for their family, right? So they can educate their kids and all this stuff, part of, the subscription there. So I thought that was a really unique thing to do.
And agreed with the vendor. I feel like even as vendors, that should be something that you already do, especially for parents or really anyone. Like, for example, mobile devices. I've had conversations with other moms, and I said, hey, do you use a parental control for your child so that you can monitor texting, and don't allow just installation of any application? How many of them said, not many. I even had to tell her and walk her through it. So that's the other part, like walking people through the exercise. We have to be more patient. We can't assume that just because we put a video out there, they see it, they can do it. No, I found it more helpful that you do kind of like a one-on-one, like a cohort workshop almost, and show and tell, where they share their screen, they share the device, and then you walk them through it step by step so they don't feel they're judged. Because most people, they don't know how to navigate. They barely even know how to get to their settings on their mobile devices to turn off certain things or even download the latest updates. So nowadays, I also preach that. I say, hey, did you download the latest update for your browser? Did you, simple things like one tip at a time. I'm actually thinking of writing a blog, just one security tip for everyone to have. So I'm like, hey, today, make sure you have a unique password. Please have a password manager. I'm begging you. I'm trying to make it more fun and more relatable, but one thing at a time, because I believe everyone's so overwhelmed and burnt out today, they can only take one information, one small slice. And if we need to repeat it in a great way.
Right. Yeah, which is why, the attackers are attacking people. Right. So definitely need, that. So kind of, that we know the people, we're going to do what we can to kind of educate and train. I kind of tell people, they ask, well, what's the success rate? How do you know if it's working? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not going to be 0%, click rate or things like that. But I also say it as there's campaigns out here that, you shouldn't text and drive, right? People still do it, but hopefully some people have stopped doing it, right? and so it's less. So that's kind of the way that, I look at, training here. I think it's a training and education. You got to do the campaigns here. It's going to help somebody, not everybody. But
yeah. And we can also partner with different organizations, right? Just for example, that you said the campaign about not texting. In our neighborhood, someone is a comedian and a great one at that. So every so often on their signs, they would say some funny blurb about not speeding. They said, hey, it's 98 degrees. Temperature, not speed limit, right? Yeah. Like those, like two funny lines like that makes you pay attention, because that's the other thing. We need to get their attention and retain that information, right? This way it doesn't feel like all the effort of development, of curating, or even campaigning and marketing it doesn't go to wayside. I feel like we need to partner with all organizations, the law enforcement, right? YMCA, the educators, the schools, the different agencies, even the park districts, you name it, sports clubs, soccer. I feel like even that, especially, I'm bringing it up because many of our kids spend a lot of time in clubs or groups. Same thing with adults. Some of us are in dance classes or whatever. Just having a short thing. Hey, by the way, don't forget, quick heads up. We can insert that in a few seconds.
No, absolutely right. So so I can see the passion there, about that. So what type of roles, are you looking for? And, how could you think you could help companies, kind of with your passion and help and organizations and the communities be safe?
I would say leadership of, many complex teams. I like working with multi-specialists, you can say, almost like a knock, right? I'm very hooked on detective things. I've always loved MacGyver in the old school days, right? Remember that show? And I've also, recently, I'm going to show you my movie binging here. I've been watching FBI quite a bit as a series. And every time I think security guys, I was like, yep. How trackable are devices, right? So I want to be almost an investigative side of things to detect and maybe prevent a lot of these attacks by having the telemetry, the information, and say, hey, let's get to this. This is something that we need to address, right? I want to be part of different organizations, like even Interpol. If, I just read more about Interpol and I'm like, wow, that's like managing data in a large scale globally. I feel like I would love doing something like that. That probably my future role will be working with them. Who knows? I just love information and collating it, aggregating it, because with so much information out there, I feel like that's the difficulties. How do you aggregate the information and how do you prioritize which attacks are something we need to stop now, urgent, and how can we prevent it? So there's always that balance, right? And I feel like that is something that's interesting to me.
And, there's definitely, organizations with the limited, resources and all of these things. We need, cyber people in here for, the governance, right? Setting the policy, the rules of the road, thou shall do, right? And the identity, right? Who's logging in to the systems, and as you mentioned, in the SOC and not, someone has to see the activity, that's going on, in these organizations, and and making sure, because we need all this, because even though we want to educate and train our users, they're going to click. Bad things are going to happen. And so, so maybe do you have any thoughts on things around cyber resiliency? We see it in the new healthcare and all these things here. Things are going to happen, right? So kind of what are your thoughts, I guess, on what you're seeing in the landscape and how organizations may need to kind of think differently about this cyber problem?
You called out a great point on governance, right? Policies even, because you can't control anything unless you have frameworks, policies, and processes. And I feel like a call out to everyone, regardless of the industry, whether it's cyber or not, value documentation, tracking assets better, right? Keeping up to date to your systems so that you know what's critical and you can then tier and categorize that accordingly. I know it's a very mundane type of task, but it's so important. It's so critical to document well and to value that skill, more importantly today, because automation is going to help with that. AI can help with that as well. I feel like AI can fill that gap of addressing the gaps and finding anomalies and patterns of bad in there. So that should just be an additional tool set. We also need to do better on, on understanding interoperability between systems and making sure that security is first when developing anything. It shouldn't be the last thought, right? Regardless if it's an emerging technology, we need to think security first, especially now where quantum computing is moving fast. I'm concerned that encryption is going to get cracked sooner than later. And that's what we're using to encrypt systems so that we can protect our systems, right? So I feel like we need to do better as far as standards sharing, best practices, not to mention quick start guides, because not every organization has the capacity to have a team of experts. We need to make it easier for not only corporations, but also small business, even for one person to have secure as first of mind, regardless of the size of the organization.
No, and you hit on the point there, so a lot of organizations are struggling, healthcare and all these different industries, I should say. And then we also see there's a workforce shortage, where the numbers can vary, and then a skill set shortage. What do you think are some of the skills, that organizations might need to help solve that problem?
We need to do better on the educational side. Like, how many are going to college, right? And maybe barely touched the technology that they're supposed to know about when they go out and hire and get hired in the workforce. I'm sure there's plenty of equipment out there just sitting somewhere in the floors. I'm not going to say who, that interns and students can learn now. They could just borrow and use those systems so that they can practice hands-on. I believe in hands-on practice should start early, even early like high school, if not middle school. They need to change the curriculum and say, use more certified type tracks for the early ones. So I'm speaking to the early entry level, right? Because that's also going to bring excitement. We have so much shortage in cyber that we need to excite them. We need to make it more intriguing, not to mention retain them, teach them soft skills, communication, how to brand, how to work with teams, how to address conflicts, how to articulate things better, how to listen and actually capture the requirements. Like, how many statement of works did I struggle to review, even RFPs, where our solutions architects were not really capturing the actual need of the customer. They were wanting to pitch sell some feature, some product, but they were not addressing the actual problem, the business problem. And I feel like we need to do better on teaching. I feel like ITIL 4 Foundation is a great standard for certification because it gives you the bigger picture of understanding, okay, what does my organization need? What does the leadership think? What does the board of members require for the investors? And then how do you translate that from top level to down level, right? To the middle level leadership, and then to the front line? Because if you want anyone to succeed, we have to have great leadership from the top and down, right? And I feel like that is something we need to start cultivating and fostering more. That it's not just a technical skill, because and you said it before, we can train someone to be competent, but the hardest skill is the people side. How do we ensure that they can communicate in technical and then the business side and to influence good decisions?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Those soft skills is what's going to help elevate there, because because it's something that I struggled with. So like, hey, is it a workforce problem, meaning that we don't have people who want to fill the roles in cyber? Or is it a skill set problem? And it could be both. We don't have skills, but then that's always been the case, right? I mean, hey, I didn't know a PBX. I didn't know how to, install a Novell, right? But I learned, to do that. But what everyone couldn't do was communicate the ask, why we need to upgrade this server. I need funding for this, or how to put this in a presentation, and work with peers and and colleagues there. So I think that's a very interesting point that'll never go away.
No, and understanding the financial responsibilities is something also that we need to teach better from the early ages and on. We all have faced it before, trying to sponsor a project or even deliver it. What was our constraint? One was time, one was money, and resource, right? Those three things at the triangle, right? And I always tell you, it's like, do we have the time? Do we have the budget? Do we have the people? And that's something that's three simple things that somehow we evade in conversations, whether because we have different agendas or goals. We're not aligned. And that alignment is typically missing. And conversation and how to address those differences and then getting them to have a consensus is key. So I feel like consensus driving is important, because you're not going to get 100%, but it's better than not having any protections, right? Would you rather have zero protections in your system for no security controls because you are overthinking, too perfect, or have something, because then you can accept the risk that you can handle and tolerate what you can, and then have workarounds to address it, right? And the other piece that I don't think comes up enough is understanding working with the legal team and compliance teams, right? Typically, especially in the engineering background, we're thinking nuts and bolts. We're thinking delivering the solution, but we don't always think far ahead. Is this something compliance related? Is this an audit related? Is this something that's liable, right? GDPR, PCI, HIPAA, right? We don't think that far enough to say, hey, it's not just installing a solution. You're impacting people, and we bringing it back to the people side. We need to focus more on say, if I do this, how does this benefit the organization, the people inside it, outside it, the partners, the vendors, everyone, and the whole world for that matter? Because that's the amazing thing about technology, right? We can talk to someone from US, to someone in Zimbabwe, to someone in Papua New Guinea where I was born. It's an amazing to me. I mean, the world technology is a wonder to me, right? The fact that I can talk to you in milliseconds just over the internet. I feel like people should be proud of this right now, and we need to do better, become better citizens and take care of it and say, hey, let's make this safer and usable, because I can see endless potential that benefit all of us.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think those are good points there. So, and it kind of even reminded me, kind of going back to my early, in career, I just love doing the tech stuff, right? Installing this, installing that. And then I knew what the company did that I was at, but I really couldn't tell you what we did, how we did it, or why we were doing what we were doing. And, somebody kind of made the comment, it was like, kind of jokingly, but then I thought about it. Hey, Ken doesn't even know what we do here. How we all laugh. But then I was like, I don't even know. That's why I don't know what the company does, or, how we're doing it, or how I'm contributing, to the overall, mission there. So that really, stood out for me. I said, okay, I need to understand how this business, works here, because otherwise I may just be this technical role sitting in this box here. So
yeah, exactly. And I also want to address burnout, right? It's real. We do burn out. Being hyper focused on the job that we do, whatever it is, especially us that are deep dive in cyber or technology, we get carried away and neglect our personal lives, our own health for that matter. And that causes security problems, right? When you have a talented person now can't execute and design because they don't have a clear head, they're not taking care of themselves, how can they perform at their most top peak performance if they're not even thinking about their overall wellness? So I feel like protecting our assets is not just that, protecting the specialist, a CISO like yourself, so you can make good decisions for short and long term is important.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's good. Kind of switching, topics here, kind of to the emerging trends. I know you already mentioned AI. Just kind of, what's your thoughts on AIs? Is it good, bad? Does it scare you? Or, kind of, what's your thoughts on that?
All of the above. I can't even say one, only because one, I'm excited because it's finally getting it in front of the user. People are finally getting to touch it, see how relevant, how much time savings, how much creativity, even for just grammar checks. Like how many struggle and use Grammarly on just document an email or any document for that matter. And it's been amazing to test. I tried Google Gemini, which is one of my favorites. Microsoft Copilot. I've tried ChatGPT. I'm just gonna say I'm not paid to say this, but just from my observation, just using it even for just resume building, right? And I would say ChatGPT was too verbose for me. I did not like so much of that text being put. I like Google Gemini only because it was able to summarize it better and give me tips. Microsoft Copilot was handy because it also gave you resource links that you might want to just refer to double check. So I would invite everyone to try all just to see what fits. And the most recent one that I tried was Perplexity.ai. I didn't even know that existed until somebody mentioned it. It's great for researching so that you can find resources that you can just compare to, because that's the other concern I have is hallucination, right? Because AI is compiling things, creating things, not just copying, it's generating new information. I want to make sure that, especially for legal, for finance, or healthcare, that I'm giving correct information. I'm not going to just run this prompt, ask it a question, and that's correct. No, I need to cross-reference, just like when I do with Google search or any searching. I believe that you need to continue to do your diligence in making sure that your data is accurate and you have legal IP, right? And that's the other part, right? I'm concerned about intellectual property, right? Because this AI is consuming a lot of information. How do we know that information is something I opted in for and they have the right to use it? Like even the voice, right? I can't remember the actress's name. And they mentioned that, hey, why does this voice sound like me? I didn't give you authorization to use my voice now for your AI, right? So to me, there's a concern. Uh, and the other piece, that the third point I'll make is how do we transition now the workforce to be able to address the advancements of AI? It's gonna create more jobs, but then how do we transition the workforce so that they can be prepared, have the skills, the competency, and even the understanding to securely use those tools to fit the use cases? So those are big ones for me.
Yep. Yep. And that kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about education, right? Educating our users now, where before, hey, here's how you spot a fish, or maybe, hey, now you can't use this way, right? You can't maybe in the organization put this data in Chat GPT. We need this to go here, or, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of education. And you're talking about the deep fakes now, where, hey, it looks like I'm talking to May. It may not be, right? So what are those cues or clues that we need to look for that our staff may be talking to?
And great that you called out deepfake. That was actually one of my bigger concerns, because defamation is very bad. I mean, I imagine yourself saying, hey, you committed this action or this behavior, and now you're being imprisoned or convicted for something you didn't do, right? I mean, we already get called out on our social media, putting information that shouldn't, and they're saying, oh, you did this and you did that. And deepfake just makes it even more real. And I feel like this is now a call out to the world. We need now tools that can decipher whether it's AI or deepfake or not. I feel like now as a consumer, it's a desperate need now to have tools that can distinguish reality, real fact, over that, because that's dangerous, right? Most users can't tell. I mean, it's not even just deepfake videos. They're also making automated generated voice. They call people, sound like real people. I mean, texting, our generation today is very familiar with texting, right? And they send phishing texts all over. And how do you know that's trusted, right? So I feel like we need to do better. Great that we're innovating fast, but now we need safeguards. We need tools that can distinguish, is this really true or not? There's not enough of that unless you know of a tool. I have yet to find one that says, all right, I can tell this is not real. That's a dangerous position to be in.
No, very clear. That is something that everyone's going to have to be, thinking about. I hear things like fake words or code words, so that we can say, this is how I know that I'm talking to you, because I cannot tell.
And I mean, why do we even have to go that far that we have to say code words now, right? And then let's say we do say code words. Now, who's sniffing and listening now to know the code word? And now they will use it for the next instance of a call or a video.
That's right.
So we're not even safe there.
No, and I think kind of to that point, I go back to the education, still, it's not going to be about just clicking links and things like that. What we need to understand is this something that's part of my day-to-day job? If you're in the organization, the CEO has never called me before. Why is he asking me to do this? Right. So we have to train, the users to say, hey, this is an anomaly or something outside of my day-to-day, type role here. Regardless, I know it looks like the person, sounds like the person, but what they're telling me to do is not what they would normally do. And we have to just train our users to do that, so they don't feel that pressure, that urgency to respond, and then they can put the organization in trouble or themselves in their personal lives in trouble.
And then level that up by doing mock exercises more regularly and practice it out. And as a leader, as a CEO, you should call it out and say, hey, as part of a security awareness, if you see messages like this, you should not respond, report it to our compliance or security team. You know what I mean? Like you said, education. But I feel like we need to make it more of an involved step so that they model the same behavior, not just the actual trainers, because, you get more influence if your leaders themselves are modeling in their team sessions, their one-on-one more regularly, and then passing it down, and they do the same going down the organization.
Yep. One thing I wanted to kind of, go back to is that you're, looking for roles, and hopefully managers are, looking at this here. But so now we just talked about the problems, the relentless, problems that organizations will have to deal with. Organizations are busy. They're doing a lot of things. Security departments are doing a lot of things. How do you prioritize? You got a busy personal life, and then you're going to come into a role where it's going to be a lot of priorities, a lot of things thrown at you. How do you handle that?
I would say speak to the stakeholders themselves, right? See what their priorities are. So if I'm introduced an organization, I would meet with them and see what their key priorities are, because you obviously can't tackle all, but depending on their function and their impact, you can see the level of understanding and controls that you really need. And also look at what you already have. In most cases, organizations already have the security controls. They're just not updating them or not tracking the assets correctly. I say work with what you have, improve it, do a continuous review, peer reviews, checks and audits are important. It's going to be a continuous loop back of saying, all right, what do we have? What's the gap? How do we address it? If we don't have certain things, is there a budget that we can get approval for? What's the business value that we're going to ask for that's going to promote the importance of getting the solution or even service? I would say keep it simple, right? That's the most important thing about cybersecurity is maybe even consolidate and streamline things, because sometimes if we configure, design things too complex, it's harder for us to manage. So how can we simplify the way we manage and operate? Yeah. And how do we make sure that any person understands what you're educating them or even training them? So I feel like even reducing the verbiage on things, like the user acceptance, it shouldn't be a whole 2 pages to do things, right? I feel like we need to make it simple for anyone to say, all right, I know what you're asking me to do and I could do it right now.
Right. No, I think that makes a lot of sense there. Because we can overcomplicate things there. Now, you said you want to also be a leader and kind of lead teams as well. Kind of the same thing, kind of flipping it. How do you, I've noticed a lot of the teams don't know how to prioritize it, but when a manager tells them to do something, they feel like they have to do it all, stop everything and do it all at once. How do you grow and develop your teams and help them prioritize to avoid that burnout that you talked about earlier?
I look for champions. I believe champions are in different levels. I look for people that love to share and promote and already are modeling great behavior. So I use them as an example. So I like the tiering piece of having team leads. When depending on the size of the team, I will have team leads that manage 5 or more team members underneath it. I lean on my team leads. I've had those before, and I educate them and say, hey, we are partners here. I'm here to remove obstacles from you. Here are the things that are priorities. And now here's how we train them up. I also make them as leaders themselves. I've said it before to many people. I train others so that eventually I can be the one that they replace and I move on to a different role. So I don't have a attachment to be in one position, because to me, I feel like you have to remove that insecurity, that this is not something that I'm trying to replace you. I want them to have the comfortability, the space to say, hey, I can be a leader just like you too. And that's what I want to model, right? And the only way to do that is giving them that trust. Baby steps also, keeping things simple. Like it takes time. We have to be patient. I'll give you an example. I did training for Python for a year for our engineers, for over 30 engineers. Every Wednesday, we trained Python from scratch, all the way from the beginning to functions to classes. Little by little, engineers were picking it up. They were also teaching me because I wasn't the expert in Python, right? And I also did one-on-one. It took them about 3 months to feel comfortable to actually apply it to their projects, but that's the win, right? You have to be patient. I feel like I have that patience, that each person has different individual needs. And as a leader, we cannot assume one thing works for another. We can never assume that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Because everyone's different. Everyone has different motivations, and then who they are today is not going to be who they are tomorrow. So you got to constantly check in on them for sure.
Always. Yeah. Always.
Yeah. Well, good. So I guess, as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you want to, highlight or talk about? Definitely in cyber, it's we can go on for hours, in this space with ransomware, just, all those different things, hospitals and all those things. But anything you want to talk about before we close?
I think that we all have a big mission, individual or world-wise. I believe that we have so much talent around the world, and I invite you to elevate those people, empower them some more, and whatever skills, especially in this world of AI and cybersecurity, we are desperately in need of people that can protect what we love and what we hold dear. And personally, that's my personal mission, because I believe in the goodness of people. I believe in the common good. And I feel like if we have more shared understanding of what idealism is of success together, then we'll have, I would say, endless potential to be successful what we do. And I'm going to love doing what I believe in, loving what I do.
Yeah. No, that's good. I can see the passion there, and I'm excited that, it's not just technical, that you have passion outside of work. I don't know how you do it all, doing all that stuff, but pat on the back. You there.
Thank you. Do what you love. Life is very short. You just never know.
That is very true.
Start now.
True. Very true. I love that. So, well, thanks for joining. The great, conversation here. So, hope the world, get a more clear picture of who you are and the value that you can bring, to organizations, and not just to an organization, but to this battle that we're fighting, together around, with cyber. So, and not just for an organization, but I really like how the emphasis and the passion that you have on how people need to protect ourselves, especially our children and the elderly, right? Because they are targets, in this space. So
it is. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to see and looking forward to meeting more people.
All right. No, until next time. Take care.
Until next time. Thank you.